So thanks for coming along. I know it's a wet night as well, so thanks for coming along and turning up. I usually start, so tonight I'm going to look at the developmental and social psychology. That's why I call it the Developing and Socializing Human. So these talks are going to explore the theories of modern psychology, point out where it's going right and where it's going wrong. That's the idea of these 4 talks. I usually start with a joke as well. I'm definitely not a stand-up comedian, so I'm going to give you another joke tonight, but it's be prepared. So what do you call the most popular guy in the hospital? The ultrasound. The ultrasound guy. I like to set the bar pretty low, so then it can improve after that, like, you know. So.
An ultrasound.
Hi there, Snap. So this is just a bit of an overview of last week. Is anybody read that? Yeah.
Yeah.
So we talked about biological psychology. I think most people were here last week, so I won't go over too much of it. But I talked about just the areas where it gets biological psychology gets right. Like, in terms of physical problems can contribute to psychological issues. That's pretty obvious. Like, you know, if you have a brain injury, or especially if you injure your head, you're going to end up with some sort of maybe psychological damage. You're not going to cope in the world as well as you used to. So the kind of hypothesis around that is, if you fix the physical complaint, you can improve psychological issues. Now, that's true. Like, you know, in a lot of cases, if you do fix the physical complaint, psychological issues do improve. But the issues about that is who defines normal behavior? Who gets to decide what is a positive or not, or a good reaction, and what's a negative reaction, and what's good and what's bad, and that's where it gets problematic.
Sorry.
Okay.
I'll be drawn out of the class.
We talked about there's an over focus on biological and medical causes, and we talked about how when you neglect the truth that somebody has a soul, you tend to over focus on the biological aspects and try to fix it that way, and that can cause all sorts of problems, which leads to mass medication, people being treated like animals, as I saw when I worked on psychiatric wards. Some of the people were treated absolutely appallingly, and that's that idea that you can train somebody like a dog to do whatever you want them to do, and if you fix the biological problem, everything gets sorted, and it doesn't work like that. So I thought about lots of riches for the pharmaceutical companies that increase sickness. And then I talk about solutions, just having a bit more skepticism about medical expertise, because sometimes they're not getting reliable information. So you have to search out this information yourself. You know, you have to sort of make sure you get all the information you can from your doctor as well, not the questioning. And then just back to common sense, you know, just getting fresh air, eating, you know, your fruit and veg, all that sort of stuff. Back to this basic. And again, as I said, remembering that human beings have a soul and a body. So that was last week. So this week I'm going to talk about social and developmental psychology. That's a bit dark, but hopefully you can read that. I'll read out the definitions there anyway. So my background, I've something for people who weren't here previously. I've got a master's in psychology, and then I worked in the addiction mental health for the last 10 years, and also have a diploma in cognitive behavioral skills and studies. I worked in a cultural psychology department, which is like a social psychology department as well, so I kind of delved into this stuff. The developmental psychology, I studied that when I was in university as well, so this is just some definitions of social and developmental psychology. So social psychology is a scientific study of how people's thoughts, feelings, and behaviors are influenced by the actual, imagined, or implied presence of others. And social psychologists typically explain human behavior as a result of the interaction of mental states and social situations. There's nothing complicated about that, just saying people around us affect us and our environment affects us. That's kind of what it's studying. That's what social psychology looks at, and how people affect us. Developmental psychology is a scientific approach which aims to explain growth, change, and consistency through the lifespan. Developmental psychology looks at how thinking, feeling, and behavior change throughout a person's life. So it's just looking at consistency, how people develop, and the consistent patterns that develop along with that. That's basically developmental psychology. There's nothing that stands out here that's kind of problematic in these definitions. When I defined biological psychology last week, I talked about emergent properties of the brain. That's problematic because that sort of indicates that consciousness is a biological process. There's nothing in these definitions that are problematic. These are just telling it what they're looking at. So that's just some brief definitions. It's what does social psychology theories get right? Basically, as you might have been able to see, this is just two people arguing, pointing at each other. You know, it's talking about other people have an effect on us. If you're up against people that are constantly arguing with you, are really angry at you, or sort of spiteful or resentful, it does affect you. It can have an effect on you. So if there's constant arguments and things like that, and that's going to have an effect on you. This is basic common sense stuff. So this is the stuff that social psychology gets right. The circumstances, environments we're brought up in, or which we find ourselves, affect us. I've got a picture here of a sort of high-rise building, like, you know, sort of the Ballymuns or the towers that were there years ago. Like, you know, if you're brought up in those sort of environments, it does have an effect on your sort of psychological. It can have an effect on your psychological well-being. They're tough environments to grow up in, like especially if you're in sort of poor areas. There's even drug use, or there's needles left here, there, and everywhere. You know, that sort of way. That's tough. Like you kind of have to be a bit more on edge. So these sort of environments are pretty unhealthy for people. We kind of know that basic common sense. It's good to be out, and even the studies back that up as well. When it looks at the sort of psychological health of people that are live in these sort of environments compared to people who live out in the open countryside, it does show that living in an open countryside is much better for your psychological well-being. It's kind of basic stuff. So I know some ladies from Gartlettra, so you know that's good countryside area. Like, you know, so so yeah, if you change your social environment, you alter that, that can help to pick up people's mood, and it can help to affect people's psychological health. So if you can kind of get out of the country, it's like the, you know, people escape to Longford today, like the centre parks, just to have some sort of be out in the woods, and have all the facilities there, of course, as well. But it's just that idea of getting away from things, coming to Longford. I also thought that gross inequalities can contribute to societal unrest and disturbances. Like that's something that you know, I wouldn't agree. Well, I wouldn't agree with a lot of what modern social psychologists say today, in terms of the sort of Marxist stuff that they talk about. But they do kind of get something right there. There is huge inequalities amongst people. There's a huge amount of people that control so much wealth in the world, and there's so many people that are so poor. And that sort of level of inequality does create societal unrest and disturbances. So there's something there as well. And I'll come back to that again. So it's basically just saying, look, if you sort out the environment, if you create a healthy environment, you can help to improve people's general psychological health. Basically, that's what social psychology is looking at, and that's the theory behind it. And that's what it gets right as well, because it says if you do improve environments or people's circumstances, it does help to pick up their psychological well-being. So what does developmental psychology theories get right? So it's basically, look, this is, again, none of this stuff is too complicated. It's a lot of common sense. There's a lot of jargon in modern psychology today, and it can be very confusing for people as well. When I was studying it, I found it quite there was no clear definitions. There was a lot of nonsense. There was a lot of theories that just didn't make any sense. But we're trying to just bring it back to what they actually get right, rather than talk about all that psychological jargon. So there are patterns in human development from conception to death. We know this. Particularly, I think some of the best developmental psychologists, the amateur developmental psychologists, are women that have lots of children, because they see development patterns, or grandmothers that have lots of grandkids, because they can see all these different developmental patterns. So that experience is really useful. And even the most famous developmental psychologist, Piaget, is in the modern psychology field. He studied his own children to get an understanding of human development. So it's kind of a lot of this stuff people know just because of experience and just looking at their own sort of patterns, looking at their children's patterns. And these sort of development can be predicted reasonably well. So in terms of the age we are able to reason, that can be predicted fairly well. It's around the age of 7. People's memory capacities, the ability to understand things, ability to take in information, ability to retain information, all these sort of things happen in certain patterns throughout a person's life. Generally, in terms of physical development, you're probably in the best physical shape and you're probably 25s, around that, sort of 25 to 30. Then things start declining. Because you see that with even professional athletes, once they get to about 35 or so, they're on their way out there. But in terms of your intellectual, the peak of your intellectual ability, it's usually around in your 40s or so, and then it starts. You might have gained more wisdom as you go as you get older, but you're not able to retain maybe information as well as you used to. You're not able to remember things. Some things just slip out of your mind as you get that bit older. So, and that's just to do with biological processes. I just talked about one's early childhood formation has a significant effect. I'll take a drink of water. It's pretty basic as well. One's early childhood formation has a significant effect on the rest of one's life. So, having worked with people that have had psychological issues and things like that, a lot of the stuff you can trace back to their childhood. They've had particularly traumatic childhoods, and that can cause all sorts of problems for people as well. So, if the formation is kind of, you don't get the guidance, support, direction you need, that can cause all sorts of problems. So, very basic stuff. Good parenting and secure attachments are very important for psychological well-being. There's a theorist, a modern psychologist theorist called Bowlby. He's quite famous in the psychological field. And he talked about attachment theory. Now, having a strong, secure attachment to your primary caregiver, this is the way they talk, this is the language they would use, which would be your mother in the vast majority of cases. Having that sort of secure attachment is really important for psychological well-being as well. You can see that if people don't have that when they're young, sometimes they can be a bit cagey with people. You know, if they've had certain experiences with people close to them, they can have just that sort of anxiety that sort of kind of can spring on the rest of their life. It doesn't mean they might be dealing with, there's some scars that we carry that from our childhood. All of us have some to a certain degree, but some have more than others.
Sorry, does it matter if the primary caregiver is male or female?
I would say it does matter. I'd say it's better if it's the mother, but I haven't looked into the actual science around it. But the hypothesis is if people receive the right formation, appropriate education, appropriate care and nutrition, they will develop in a healthy manner. That's sort of, and that's true. Here's where it gets it gets problematic, because when you're trying to, somebody has to decide what is what's good development and what's bad development, what's normal development, what's abnormal development. There has to be somebody to define, well, that behavior is wrong, or that way of thinking is wrong, or that way of acting is wrong. All these sort of things have to be defined by somebody. So then they can sort of implement sort of interventions or whatever it might be. So this is where we get sort of problematic when you start defining, well, what's good parenting, what's appropriate development, what's appropriate behavior amongst kids, all this sort of stuff. Now, there's not in the modern psychological field, and also within sociology, which is talks about sort of how our society affects our behavior. It's dominated by Marxist theories. It's dominated by their anti-Christian theories. A lot of the social psychologists and sociologists. So they're going to have a sort of understanding about human behavior that's completely at odds with what is actually true. So you have to be very careful of where this information is coming from. One, I've mentioned also, if it's not Marxist, sometimes what happens, if it's not dominated by Marxist theories, which is kind of the left-wing theories, there's a reaction from the right wing, which sometimes is the likes of Ayn Rand. People might have heard of Ayn Rand. Ayn Rand is linked with libertarianism. So that's talking about just complete free market capitalism, which also Ayn Rand doesn't believe that a person has a soul as well, and so this says that religion is absolutely useless and is actually bad for people as well. So these are the sort of theorists that are out there that are sort of deciding what's good behavior, what's bad behavior, what's good for society and what's bad for society. Okay. Also, you've got developmental psychologists like Piaget, who I mentioned earlier, the French developmental psychologist, one of the most popular figures in modern psychology. And he doesn't believe that a person has a soul. So these are the sort of people that are very popular in the modern psychology field today. Also, you've got pharmaceutical companies obviously have an influence on trying to define what is good behavior and bad behavior to market their own products as well. I spoke more about this last week, and they have a big influence on government and policies and things like that as well. And also, of course, government ministers also decide what's appropriate behavior, what's inappropriate behavior. So you've got the likes of Simon Harris sort of saying that, you know, we need to push religion out of the health and social policies completely. And you've also got people like Catherine Zapponi, who wants to do the same thing. And these are the people that are in charge. These are the ones defining or trying to define what is good behavior and bad behavior amongst children. So this is the sort of stuff happening. Also then, it's also asking, what does the perfect society look like? And who gets to define that? And as I said, what is correct formation? What is the right sort of pattern for development? Things like that. This is all, who's deciding, who's making these decisions is incredibly important. And also, what is the correct medical care as well? I spoke a bit about that last week, but I'll speak a bit more about it this week. So if there's certain people making these decisions, as I said, amongst social psychologists in academia, dominated by Marxist theories, anti-Christian theories, and then you've got your ministers that are sort of influenced by these academics as well, and also bring their own agenda. This is the sort of stuff that ends up happening. And also, as I said, you've got the pharmaceutical companies making money off this sort of stuff. So there is attempts at making the perfect children, you know, saying, well, that child is acting abnormally, so we're going to try to fix them and say bring them back into the normal behavior. And that gets crazy. Like you've got kids in the USA, like, you know, 1-year-old kids being diagnosed antidepressants, like, you know, this sort of stuff. And you've got children being diagnosed antipsychotics as well. Antipsychotics are an incredibly powerful drug, like, and also dose related. So the more the dose you receive, the more you shrink the brain as well. So their development will be delayed. They're given these sort of, but this is the sort of stuff that happens once you've got these people in charge. They've got their own agendas and they're pushing their own agendas. You have also challenging behavior, usually from boys as well. I mentioned this last week briefly. Boys have been diagnosed at huge rates with ADHD, and a lot of that is because they're just a bit more challenging. They're not as agreeable, and the psychological tests show that they don't score as agreeable and they're not as conscientious as girls. So they're quite a handful sometimes for some teachers and in certain environments. So unfortunately, they get diagnosed with ADHD and get then drugged on Ritalin, which is speed, pretty much. It's amphetamine.
Sorry, Mark. I've heard somebody saying that children that are taking some of these drugs, that they can make them a little bit robotic. You know, not maybe just themselves, and then if they go off the drugs, you know, it kind of supposed to make them a little bit more, you know, well, numbs them really, I suppose.
Yeah, well, a lot of the antidepressants, they definitely do that. Yeah. The Ritalin can sort of get people. They're more attentive. They're more. Yeah. But then if they go off these drugs, they've got serious side effects.
So they're controlled, really. Then.
Yeah. Yes. Well, that's what they're trying to do. So, so talk about mass drugging and treatment of children because it's.
Why is the parents in
America? So there will be chances. I will be chance for questions at the end as well. So the mass drugging and treatment of children because of developmental issues. Now this is what's happening now. That's happening in the USA, but it's happening in Longford. This is where it gets kind of it's right on our doorstep, like, you know. And if we just need to have our eyes open to this sort of stuff. This is a book here. There's a book here called Transmission. It's a disgusting book. It's but it's up on the library in it's on, Healthy Ireland, Healthy Ireland campaign. You might have heard about it. It's like big campaign trying to get people off the couch and go running and things like this. But one of the things they're pushing as well is the whole LGBT transgender stuff as well. They're pushing that big thing. So you'll find that book's on the, if you walk into Longford Library, it's just, this is a few months, it was about a year ago, but it was just there on the very front, it's to pick up for healthiness, this is the sort of stuff they're pushing. So your kid, like anybody that's going there, you can just pick this up, and the stuff that's in it is absolutely horrendous. I won't get into it, some sort of sexual stuff that's just dreadful. And you feel sorry for the girl, because this is the girl that thinks she's a boy, and she's she's been used as a tool to push this sort of stuff as well. So it's really dreadful. And also, this is a free GOSH training. That's it's a free GOSH training. If you look on ActiveLink is a place where you can find a lot of jobs in the social care field, and it talks about free training, which is I think it's gender orientation, sexual health, HIV training, and that's pushing all the transgender stuff, and that's been offered for free as well. So that's what's happening at the moment. Once you have people defining people with their own agendas, defining what's normal and abnormal. So this is more about the social psychology side of things. The last slide is more developmental psychology, although they cross over so much. One of the things that there are institutes out there trying to create utopias, trying to create their own sort of world of what the world should look like according to their theories. One of them is called Cato. It's a huge social research institute that's pushing a lot of toxicity, like the transgender stuff. Also, there's I'd say semi-secret societies, because the Freemasons they used to be a secret society because they couldn't really operate openly in our society, but now they can because they're not seen as the threat they actually are. So they're kind of semi-secret. People seem to, there's even parades over in the UK, but they still hide what their agenda is. And I agree. Here's where I agree. I definitely don't agree with feminists on most things, because of a lot of their theories are completely based on false understandings of man and woman, and also they've got loads of Marxist stuff mixed in there as well, which is your anti-Christian stuff. But I do agree with them when they say there's a small group of men that are sort of dictating things around the world, but they target the wrong men. They should be looking at these sort of groups that are actually the main problem. A lot with these social theories as well, what the social psychologists are pushing. They're pushing like people to be more resentful, be more envious, be more jealous. Like there is huge divisions in the world. There's huge divisions between the richest and the poorest. But what a lot of these campaigners do in terms of the Marxists, they just drum up that resentment, that envy, that jealousy, to get people sort of bitter and just ready to completely just blow their fuse, and that creates all sorts of tension in society. So you've got the likes of people like, people before profit. That party that's run by Richard Boyd Barrett. It's a political party. It's socialist, Marxist in its orientation. So they're trying to drum up support for their service by just drawing up resentment, envy, jealousy, all these sort of things, and that's what it creates all this sort of people at each other's throats. Then, so I mentioned like people are trying to create the perfect society. It's been attempted a few times. It's been attempted by China with communism, and it's attempted by the Soviet Union as well with communism. And this is the picture of Tiananmen Square here. There's a great book, 1984, by George Orwell, and that's a kind of really good insight into it's just a good insight. It's fictional, but it's a really good insight into how they're trying to break people, and that's through totalitarian regimes. But there's also another reaction to that. Then there's kind of and we see this more today. There's a push for unrestricted sort of free trade and unrestricted capitalism, and so people can just sell whatever they want. That's why you end up with a book like The Transmission, which I spoke about, on the shelves in library, because they said, well, people can just read what they want, do what they want, sell what they want. If it sells, it's all good. That's the sort of attitude. So, and that you see that in the USA and New Zealand. And again, there's a great book, I don't know, Brave New World by Aldous Huxley. A great book, a fictional book again, but it gives an insight into this sort of behavior. So when this sort of stuff happens, then if you're against the new social order, new world order, if you're a dissident, then you get suppressed for it, and you'll get challenged for it. Like does people know Alexander Solzhenitsyn? Mm-hmm. So he's a Russian author who spent a lot of time in the gulags. He spoke out against the Soviet regime, and what they kind of started accusing him of being schizophrenic. So they said, oh, he has schizophrenia. That was the way they tried to dismiss his argument. So they used the sort of tools of psychiatry to sort of dismiss their arguments. So that's what's happening at the moment. I just got a couple of quotes that kind of sum up some of the stuff I'm talking about. This is from Dr. Michael Breton from, it's just an article that I read called The Economy of the Eternal World from The Angelus, a publication, Christian publication in 1994. He talks about, it's just talking about how they're pushing, I'll read the quote. Those who dominate finance have flamed the passions and greed of vast numbers by encouraging investment in the production and consumption of innumerable superfluous commodities. Today, the average citizen of secularized democratic republics is able in a single day to immerse himself in more distraction and dissolution than any decadent oligarch of prior ages could within a lifetime. Hedonism is readily encouraged by promoters of a secularized society. For a man dominated by disordered concupiscence is easily predictable and managed. This snuffs out all the great aspirations of the human heart. So if you can just overload people with vice and just overload them, people with superfluous commodities, just keep them distracted. They're easily controllable then. So you've got them kind of wrapped around your finger. So that's what they're going to do. That's kind of happens more, you could say, more in the USA, places like New Zealand, in Ireland. While the next quote is more about countries that push more the sort of radical Marxist socialist models. So these social ideas, these ideas that are drummed up by these forces such as Freemasons or our ministers, our government ministers, are really dangerous, particularly for the youth, which Professor Willibald Demal talks about. He says the radicalism of youth is above all a sort of metaphysical hunger, a desire to get to the root of things. It is not that the youth, overwhelmed by a great ideal or idea, wishes to work for its realization, but rather that his basic attitude being radical and fanatical, he has no ideal in the service of which he could utilize his radicalism. So he easily succumbs to the first comer who can win him over. It's like that. We all know that when we were young, like we had this sort of idealism. We wanted to change the world, like, you know, we wanted to do something with all this energy and the spirit. We had to do something. But there's forces trying to get a hold of that. Like, they're trying to direct youth in the wrong way. So that's what he talks about. Like if they're caught by the wrong forces, then they're going to be sent the wrong way. So
what kind of forces are you talking about? Like government forces or?
Well, it could be spiritual forces there as well.
Yeah, I thought you meant that.
Yeah. So there's, you know, we're dealing with spiritual forces. We're dealing with demonic forces, so we have to be careful with them. And then they come out into the world, and then you've got like your government forces as well that are in cahoots with them. You know, so this is a final quote from how drumming up the resentment and the anger and the jealousy amongst the youth, it can be absolutely, amongst the poor, is really dangerous as well. So this is from Pope Leo the 13th. He wrote a great encyclical on, I mean, my Latin's terrible, so I'm just going to say it's on socialism and communism and nihilism. So after being consigned to oblivion, the rewards and punishments of a future and never-ending existence, the keen longing after happiness has been narrowed down to the range of the present life. With such doctrines spread far and wide, and such license in thought and action, it is no wonder that men of the most lowly condition, heartsick of a humble home or poor workshop, should fix eager eyes on the abodes and fortunes of the wealthy. No wonder that tranquility no longer prevails in public or private life, or that the human race has been hurried onward to well-nigh the verge of ruin. So he's just saying, once you forget that we have a soul, and once you forget there's an eternal reward or punishment, things just fall apart. People just, that anger, that resentment comes out into the world because we're fighting for just these resources that are here now, rather than thinking about the future, thinking about eternity. So now that I've kind of now that I've depressed you again, I just don't know what to do about this. With the social and developmental psychologists, oftentimes they overplay how you can change somebody and fix somebody by just social interventions or you can change the environment, then everything will just work out. If you just get the society right, everybody will just be happy. And it's kind of saying, the last time I said the biological psychologists overemphasize the biological aspects of human behavior, but the social psychologists overemphasize the sort of social aspects will fix everything. They overemphasize that. So it's just bringing it back to acknowledge that there is biological differences or basis for behavior and different character types and different talents. I'll talk more about that in the next talk about personality psychology. But it's just acknowledging people have different skills, and you can't just force people into the mold that you want them to be like, you know. So, as I examine who's behind these social and developmental theories and their bias, I've spoken a bit about that, so it's just making sure that you know who's behind it. And just apply common sense. Like some healthy, boyish, or masculine behavior is not toxic. One of the boys get diagnosed with autism and ADHD about 4 to 5 times the rate of girls. A lot of that's cultural, because it's just because boys tend to be more fixated on, they can get very fixated on one sort of discipline rather than sort of having a range of disciplines to focus on. And they're very fixated on precision and definitions as well. They particularly can be very much, they want things explained exactly and clearly. More so than girls. Some girls do want that as well, but boys have that tendency more so. And also they challenge illegitimate authority as well. So they can be a bit of a handful. So, but that's good. This sort of stuff is good. So it shouldn't be seen as toxic. And also, just like a boy's a boy and a girl's a girl. Like, it's crazy to have to say. I know that I probably not say that this group here, but it's just that's what you have to say to people sometimes. It's just gone absolutely nuts, like, you know. So, and if people mock you for that, like, so be it. Like, just try to switch off from toxic messages emanating from the media about gender and sexuality. Particularly RTE. I don't have the notes here, but last year my father was working on something, had the radio on, RTE radio. I don't tend to listen to it, but it was on, and he had Sean O'Rourke on, and there was a researcher that had been to a transgender event, and said, like, you know, it's really important to ask people, like, you know, what their preferred pronoun is and all this sort of stuff. And, you know, you can never tell, you can never judge, like, you know, you can never judge. So some people know my father, so I was like, listen to this. So I goes to my father, he's like a 72-year-old man from the North Longford. Like, I goes to Dad, like, I've never asked you this question before, but, like, you know, what pronoun do you prefer to be called? Like, you know, if you follow through with this logic, that's where you end up. You know, it's just so that's kind of how ridiculous it actually is. Now that isn't to negate that there is some people terribly confused out there and going through some serious psychological difficulties with their beliefs about themselves and the beliefs about their sex. But they need help, they need support to sort of bring them back to normality and bring them back to reality. Not to be told that, not to pander to them so much, to say what you want to be called. So, just advertising as well is dreadful for stoking up that sort of jealousy and resentment as well. So if you can avoid that, great. And acknowledge that circumstances do affect us, but we still have a choice over how we respond to them and how we carry the crosses that come our way. Like I've met people that are born or have had some dreadful circumstances in their lives, like, and they've managed to sort of. I think that when you work in the mental health field or the addiction field, you do meet people with some shockingly bad stories, like, you know, and they hit you hard sometimes. And you got to remember, but still they're able to carry it across. Like sometimes you be looking at it and thinking, wow, how are you still here? Like, you know, but they're still able to carry it across and they're able to kind of carry on. So it's just that never give up, and it can be quite inspiring to see people that have, you know, been able to overcome these sort of really hard starts in life like this. So, again, it's just reminding as well, people, human being has a soul and a body, and you just can't understand human beings without understanding this. So finally, this is one, because there's a big push on, like, you know, if you get the social system right, if you get the economic system right, everything will just work, you know. But that's not, this comes back to the sort of fundamental aspect of Christianity. It said the function of Christianity, this is from a really good book called White Cross by Father Edward Lanes, written back in the 40s or so. And it talks about the function of Christianity is not to reform or devise economic or social systems. Her function is to reform and transform the economists themselves. So with that, we have to work on ourselves. Like, we have to do, that's where it has to begin. Like, you have to transform your own heart. And if that's everything works after that, if people were to love God and love their neighbor as themselves, things work. Things just work. So that's what sort of Father Edward Lean is getting at there. So that's it. I'll just show you what the plan is for. That's for next week. Just going to talk about cognitive and personality psychology. Sorry, just 1 second. And then that's just some further reading. As I said, 1984 by George Orwell, Brave New World is a good one as well. And then for just the understanding Catholic social teaching, if you want to really understand Catholic social teaching, that's the best book I could recommend. If you want to understand what actually Catholic teaching on these issues is, on economic issues, on social issues, this sort of thing. It's the great encyclical letters of Pope Leo XIII.